When someone asks about your childhood, do you find yourself freezing? Not because it was a nightmare, but because it feels like you skipped 15 chapters of your life. While other kids were learning to ride bikes, you were learning to read the adult language of heavy sighs and slamming cabinets. Psychology calls this parentification, but for you, it was a silent draft into a war you didn't start. You became a miniature peacekeeper, an unpaid consultant who could sense a storm in the kitchen before a single word was spoken. You didn't just grow up, you adapted to an emotional vacuum. When the adults couldn't hold the weight, you reached out your small hands and took it. But here's the strange part. You're still doing it. You've become the family architect, hyper-competent on the outside, but internally lost. You're the invisible glue in every room, the one who notices a friend's forced smile in a split second. You're a CEO in the streets, but the child inside is still waiting for permission to just stop. You've spent your life being the anchor, forgetting that anchors are designed to be hidden, heavy, and underwater, while everyone else enjoys the sail. Does this sound like the mature version of you or the exhausted one? Ever walked into a room and felt your stomach knot before anyone spoke? That's not intuition, it's hyper-vigilance. While other kids studied math, you were getting a PhD in the micro-expressions of your parents' faces. You became an emotional radar, scanning for the tightness of a jaw or the sharp clink of a glass. This trait kept you safe in a volatile home, but now, it's a tax you pay every day. You're socially skilled, but socially exhausted. You're the friend who knows exactly what to say to fix the vibe, but by the time you leave the party, you're emotionally bankrupt. And here's what most people never notice. For a child who grew up too fast, loud always equals danger. Even happy intensity feels like a threat to your nervous system. You crave peace, yet you only feel at home when there's a crisis to solve. It's a brutal paradox. You are the calmest person in an emergency, but the most anxious person when everything is finally quiet. You've spent so much time preventing storms that you've forgotten how to just sit in the sun. Do you disappear the moment things get peaceful, or does the silence actually scare you? If you feel like you're everyone's pillar, but have no one to lean on, welcome to your new identity, the family architect. While others built with Legos, you built the emotional walls of your household. You learned how to soundproof the arguments and reinforce the ceiling before it fell in. But here's the psychological twist. The architect grows up to be an adult who finds it physically painful to ask for help. To you, being needy feels like a total failure of your operating system. Because in your childhood, the adults were the needy ones, and you were the solution. This creates a lonely paradox. You are loved by many, but craving solitude. People flock to you because you're so together, but they don't see that you're screaming for a break. You hide from the world not because you hate people, but because other people feel like work. When you're alone, you finally don't have to be the architect. You can just be a pile of bricks on the floor. Check your phone. How many messages are from people asking for advice versus asking how you are? And even if they ask, do you ever tell the truth? Or just give them the architect's report that everything is under control? Ever sat down to relax, only to hear a nagging voice whisper, shouldn't you be doing something useful? This is the guilt of relaxation. When you spent your childhood as a fixer, you subconsciously learned that your value is tied to your output. If you aren't preventing a crisis, you feel invisible, or worse, guilty. For the family architect, rest doesn't feel like recovery. It feels like an abandoned post. You're like a soldier in a trench with your boots on, waiting for the next flare in the sky, even though the war ended years ago. This creates a ruthless paradox. You are deeply empathetic toward others' burnout, yet demanding of yourself. You'd tell a friend to take a week off, but punish yourself for a 20-minute nap. In a home where a parent's mood was the priority, doing nothing was dangerous. Productivity became your protective armor. If you're useful, you're wanted. If you're busy, you're safe. Look at your hobbies. Are they actually hobbies or just side projects you're trying to monetize or turn into skills? Do you feel like you need permission just to exist without being productive? Or do you fear that if you stop moving, the world you've built will finally catch up to you? One of the hardest truths for an architect is that your childhood wasn't exactly taken from you. It was donated. You gave it away, piece by piece, to keep the people you loved from falling apart. But here is the silent grief. When you spend your formative years being the emotional shock absorber for adults, you lose the chance to learn who you are when you aren't being useful. You become a strong protector with a fragile core, handling a crisis that would break anyone else, but freezing when someone asks, "What makes you happy?" Because for 20 years, the answer was always, "Whatever keeps the peace." So where do you go from here? If you've spent your life as the anchor, the idea of letting go feels like you're letting everyone drown. But here's the truth that will give you the grand release. You were never responsible for the ocean. You were just a child who was told that if you stayed heavy enough, the waves would stop. The most rebellious thing you can do now is to be useless. Not in a way that hurts others, but in a way that saves yourself. In the 2D animation of your life, imagine that heavy backpack full of stones you've been carrying. Look inside. Those aren't your stones. They belong to people who are long gone, or who should have carried their own weight. Turn around, open the bag, and let them spill out. As they hit the ground, they don't shatter. They turn into birds and fly away. You aren't mature for your age anymore. You're just a person who is finally allowed to be young. Maybe you weren't avoiding the world by being so strong. Maybe you were just protecting the child inside who is finally ready to come out and play. You don't have to be the pillar anymore. You're allowed to be the one who leans.